Questions from the community. If you're from the community, please come up to the podium and speak into the microphone when it's your turn. And then we'll go on about a 10 to 15 minute break. And then we'll go into the second presentation, which is the look ahead. All right, so first of all, RAB members, any questions for Dave and I? Please.
In all of this, you are assuming on YBI that it's either basically Coast Guard or Navy, but there are sections that are still owned by the Army. And have you cleared all that out? The torpedo building is owned by the Navy, and there's a strip that goes, it was in the slur for YBI. There's a strip that goes from the coast over to the Coast Guard that is labeled on that map from the United States Army.
I will double check on that.
Isn't that interesting? Nobody seems to remember until you try to do something to the torpedo building, and then the Navy pops up and says, "Excuse me, sir, but that's mine."
It is a fact that the Army historically had a presence on the island. I'm not aware that they have really any real presence on the island. The Coast Guard and Caltrans and Federal Highways are the only other entities really that I'm aware of at this point in time. There may be a technicality there, and I can of course double check that.
Real estate should be looking into that, but sometimes that's something so obscure you'd overlook it.
It really is, but I can definitely take a look at that and double check.
And it has been mentioned in Navy documents periodically throughout the history of this program, including the SLURA, where it was clearly drawn on the map.
Sure. Even on Treasure Island, historically, there was a small Army presence. There's always been a slight mingling of the Army and the Navy.
So we'll take that back and do some research on it. That's interesting, especially to the real estate folks, right? Because when this type of thing comes up is around transfer time.
Well, it comes up when you do your title insurance, and the title company comes back and says, "You talk to the federal government?" "Oh,
Right.
yeah, we're talking to the Navy all the time." "No, I mean the Army."
Yeah, interesting. Okay, we'll look into that and see if that really is bona fide.
Yeah, it may be gone.
It may have easily been seeded over because when you do the federal transfer agencies, they happen very easily, right? Because it's still U.S. government.
Could old maps sometimes
No, but in the 30s, the late 30s and early 40s, the Army was saying, "This is ours, this is ours."
And since the 40s, things have shifted around a lot with the Coast Guard, and it's quite possible that they have it all now. But
if they do, then it comes over into Clipper Cove. Yes. See, that's the strip. It goes from the Coast Guard to Clipper Cove for some reason.
and we'll take a look at that. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, then a couple of other things that had to do with the housing surveys. I read in the document, and I'm not going to write a letter about this because it's too small an item. It stated that you took a static reading at the threshold to the building. And in my communications with Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, it was stated repeatedly that you had to be very careful when you did your surveys to make sure that you moved across the surface in a consistent manner, which is why you have the little buggies, because you can control the speed of those. But it said you specifically paused in the doorway, so you got a stronger reading in the doorway than you would inside.
Well, okay, continue.
And isn't that going to give you a false sense that the inside of the building is safer than the actual threshold when it was merely the manner in which the data was collected?
Within each of the houses, we set up a 1 meter square grid pattern, scanned that individual grid, and then also did a static in that grid as well.
Okay. I don't think it's clear in the document that you also did a static.
Yes, ma'am.
And what were your, it mentions that there were several unexpectedly low readings. What was the response to those? The document doesn't state.
For the unexpectedly low?
Low readings.
I don't recall unexpectedly low readings.
It's in section 3.6. I don't have the document with me, so I can't find it.
You know, just to keep it in perspective, we were expecting, before we went into the houses, somewhere between 3 and 5 microarc per hour as the exposure rate. Some locations we had 2.8, 2.4. That's not, it's lower, but it's not significant.
And you were expecting to have a range anyway.
We were.
I might go back and check that and
Right.
just send it on saying, why are you using this word if it's not right? If
No,
it's
it's
not
a
saying-
comment.
if
It's a
it's not-
comment.
I agree, the word may be, there may be a better word rather than unexpectedly,
Yeah.
correct? Because like, oh, you know, it was just like, oh, it was interesting probably from a technical point of view, so we said
Yeah.
unexpectedly. Probably should have said it was what it was.
But I do remember a couple times in my weeks up here, sometimes you would find readings that are lower in some different places and then higher in others. But overall, from what you told me, I mean, that variability is expected, especially when you have different pores, different concrete pores over the decades. And as you know, Dale, those can vary fairly widely, right? From decade to decade, what quarry the concrete mix came out of can play a huge role when you're talking about levels this low. You know, the lower you go, the more variability inherently you have when you measure anything, right? The lower you go. So, but we'll look at that, the wording of that. Okay.
Were the unleased buildings inspected as well? Or was this just the habited buildings?
Leased, some that are leased were uninhabited, some were vacant, some were not. But everything that was leased, we scanned,
Whether it was occupied or not.
whether it was occupied or not.
So were there unoccupied buildings that were not leased that were not scanned?
Yes.
Oh.
So those are some of the, sort of the middle areas that are perhaps subject to the non-time critical removal action where we're bringing the buildings down. Those buildings are all scanned before they come down, so.
But they're not part of that one?
Correct, they're not part of that particular project. That project focused on anything that could possibly be habited.
Any other Rab questions before we go to community questions? Okay, community questions.